we talk rhinos and we ask if the latest series of arrests here in South Africa and then the campaigns in Vietnam will really make a difference. We also take a look at our digital platforms and conclude the day with a bit of quality jazz. But first, the headlines with Katrine Milan.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Milan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. Government has appealed to families of those who died in the Nigeria building collapse about 2 weeks ago to exercise patience. 62 South Africans among the 115 people who died when a guest house belonging to the Synagogue Church of All Nations have been positively identified. At the time of the building collapse, 349 South Africans were recorded to have been visiting the Church of televangelist TV Joshua. South African President Jacob Zuma has pledged to continue in every possible way to assist the people and governments of the hardest hit Ebola nations, namely Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone. President Jacob Zuma yesterday addressed global leaders at the United Nations.
South Africa stands ready to continue to provide whatever resources at our disposal to assist the people and governments of our sister countries of Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone.
Meanwhile, Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan appeared to jump the gun on medical advice, telling and applauding UN General Assembly that his country was free of the deadly Ebola virus. Doctors said earlier that they would have to wait to declare the outbreak over, despite the Nigerian Federal Health Ministry saying all patients being monitored for the virus had been cleared. Nigeria has not reported any new cases since the 8th of September. According to the World Health Organization, if there are no further cases, Nigeria could be declared Ebola-free on the 20th of October. And then back in South Africa, the water shortages in Gauteng are being discussed as a matter of urgency in government today. This follows days of water shortages in the Johannesburg, Tshwane and Ekurhuleni metros as well as Mogale City. Several factors have been blamed, including copper cable theft. Water tanks have been sent to areas to help residents that have been affected by the water cuts.
We don't have water, we cannot even go to bath, we cannot even cook. So everything we can, what we are doing now is just a mess up with water. So we have been affected.
We can't do anything without water, you know it. So
yeah, I've benefited a lot because people were buying too much today because they wanted containers to put water, so I benefited a lot.
Remember, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Thank you, Katrine. Now, there's no doubt that rhino poaching is at crisis levels in this country and getting worse every year. According to National Geographic, South Africa, which is home to 83% of the roughly 26,000 rhinos left in Africa, sees the most intense poaching on the continent, with most of it happening in the Kruger National Park. In 2013, a record 1,004 rhinos were killed in South Africa, a 100-fold increase since 2006, when just 10 were killed. Already this year, the country has seen 769 rhinos killed for their horns. However, there's been some success with the arrest last week of members of a suspected syndicate, as well as some SANParks employees. We are joined this morning by Mr. William Mabasa, who's the Kruger National Park's Head of Communications. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Eben.
On Monday was Rhino Day. We celebrated in South Africa World Rhino Day. But if you look at the poaching numbers and the media reports, the picture is nothing to smile about.
Of course, we can smile. The war is still going up. It's very steepy. We're still, doing everything possible. We're employing new techniques, technology and other things to continue to fight because we've realized that we're not winning this thing by, doing the same thing that we've been doing all the time. I mean, we catch them every day, but they get replaced all the time. So yes, it's still a serious matter that probably need everybody in the country, not only us inside the park, people outside, because the the area where we can, win this fight will be outside more than inside, because if we do it outside and be able to catch these people that are sitting with bags of money somewhere, who are buying the poachers that we are arresting every day, we will then be able to stop it. But for as long as we have not yet catched those people, those poachers that we are arresting, as we put them in jail, new ones come in, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
I see that you guys are collaborating with the Hawks, with the latest syndicate that's now been broken, and arrests have been made, people appearing in court and so forth. Just tell us about this syndicate, and do you think this kind of arrest will make a dent or make a difference in the process that you guys are on?
This is precisely what I'm talking about. These kind of arrests are the arrests that are going to make a serious dent in this whole issue of rhino poaching that we are facing in the country. Because the poachers, they get changed anytime, any minute, as long as they are not delivering what they are expected to deliver. But then if you catch the kingpins who are running these poaching schemes, then you are making a serious dent, and that's why we are happy that that happened last week.
I see 3 Sandparks officials were also arrested, along with a member of the police, investigating officer, and so forth. It seems as if these networks have infiltrated all organizations who deal with looking after rhinos, really. How do you, as the Kruger Park, deal with the problem of having agents within your own organization?
That is why, even we have so far been able to arrest a number of our own employees, because when we look at this thing, we do not only look outside, but we look everywhere where we believe it could be happening. And we have so far arrested, more than 8 of our own people inside, most of them staff members who are actually responsible for, protecting these rhinos, because we are very aware of the fact that in every situation like this, it is easy for people to be infiltrated and, be corrupted and do this kind of thing. So we don't leave any stone unturned.
I see that your modus operandi with the authorities are changing. You're now targeting the syndicates themselves, but how do these syndicates operate? Just give us a little insight. We see now lawyers have been arrested, vets have been arrested, helicopter pilots and so forth. How do they fit together, and how do they operate both nationally and then internationally?
Of course, syndicate crime, it's a very long network with a big chain, but most of the work around those intelligence is done by the Hawks, in collaboration with our own investigators. We would not go into details of how they do it, because I believe that we are on a public broadcaster. The criminals that we're talking about are also watching this program now.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I wanted to ask you, I see that the World Wildlife Fund, they're now taking the fight to countries like Vietnam. They're running campaigns in different Asian countries, ad campaigns targeting the user. Would you integrate in that sort of approach? Is that an approach you think that might bear fruit? And what's your opinion on the work that the WWF is doing?
You see, like I said earlier on, rhino poaching in South Africa should involve everybody. And we welcome every effort that everybody is doing from any quarter, because that's what we need if we were to ultimately, stop this rhino poaching scourge in South Africa. So whilst we're doing what we're doing, WWF doing what they are doing on the other side, and anybody else doing whatever they are doing, we think that all those efforts added together will probably provide an answer that we all need as a country.
Finally, sir, as the Kruger Park, what's your message to the poachers and to the public right now?
The poachers must stop. we have a responsibility as, this country to conserve these natural heritages not for our own sake, but for the sake of the generations that are coming, after us. Perhaps to leave these things in a better position than it was when we received it from our forefathers. To the rest of the country, I'm saying, let everybody get concerned in what is happening around rhino poaching. Let everybody try and do something. These people that are poaching are not necessarily people coming from another planet. These are people that stays with us in our villages, in our cities, all the areas. Some of them, we know them. And if you know them, don't keep quiet. Tell the police, tell somebody, so that these people be arrested. In that way, you would have made a contribution. So everybody even can make a contribution towards this whole issue that we have in the country now, which is now becoming a crisis.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Mr. William Mapasa, who's the Kruger National Park's Head of Communications. Thank you once again. The call is out to you as members of the public. We know who those people are in our communities that are involved in these things, and you at home, sitting in your armchair, can make a difference by communicating with the police and other authorities if you have any information. Let's take a look at what you're saying about rhino poaching today on social media at SABC Newsroom. Of course, that's where we live. Jorge Eduardo Rios says, last year, 1,004 rhino were poached in South Africa. Current trends indicate this year will be deadlier. Help raise awareness on World Rhino Day. It's actually World Rhino Week now. It's been a very difficult week. Jessica Rotondi says the best way to combat poaching is for Asian countries to stop believing magic exists when you ingest elephants, rhinos, tigers, etc. Fortunately, the WWF is starting a campaign that deals with it. Promise, I am Richotso, says, let us protect our ecosystem. Let us march against all forms of poaching. Yes, all forms of poaching are on the increase here in Southern Africa. Barack Ebuk says, yesterday 224 members of Congress still won't listen to the scientific consensus on climate change. Of course, that is where we're heading next. That will be our next discussion. Jugal Patel says 400,000 people came from across the world to the People's Climate March. Not one of the demonstrators were arrested. Karen Mpu says, well, we've missed it, we've lost it. Now, New York was this week center stage when it comes to climate change. The largest gathering of world leaders on climate change opened at the United Nations on Tuesday amid calls for action to put the planet on course toward reversing global warming, with the aim of building support for a global climate treaty to be finalized next year in Paris. Now, we are joined this morning by Farrell Adam, a team leader of the climate justice group 350.org. Very good morning, Farrell. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We had the climate change and we had a lot of hoo-ha. We've had the march, we've had everything. How is this going to help set us on the right path, on the path that we have to be? It seems as time is running out.
Time has run out. We are living climate change as it's happening. It's just how bad it's going to be. I think that what this signifies for the first time is that globally people are saying that the talk shops need to come to an end and that people on the ground are actually angry and they're saying that we need to make change. So listening, 400,000 was just in New York, but globally there were 2,500 events in over 150 countries. So people are making their voices louder around climate change, and that's going to make the change. And
the people are making their voice louder, but the decision makers seem to be dragging their feet. There's still discussions around whether this climate change is real. In Congress. So that's the worrying thing, isn't it?
It is. It's extremely worrying that our governments are still not listening to people. But I think that when it does play itself into elections, and when people realize that actually they're not going to be voted in because they're making poor decisions on environment and climate justice, then I think they will start listening a bit more. But also, people need to put more pressure. Citizens do have some power.
Yeah.
We've seen that in South Africa with apartheid. We had marches and marches, and you could say that, oh, what are we going to gain? But I do think that citizens do have a power to change.
Good citizenry always has power, and that's I think, the hope that we carry. Our president this week spoke or warned the global leaders about climate change threatening development gains. Do you think this is a language that might resonate a little bit better with the politicians of the world? And maybe that's the strategy that we have to use to try and bend their ears?
It's a difficult one. I mean, I think that would be ideal, that they would need to listen. But we've had the Millennium Development Goals where, that was talked about in talking about development and how that will affect especially Africa. The problem is the power of the fossil fuel industry and the lobby. And that's what we need to weaken. And that is happening on a small scale, but still, as much as, they're part of the UN negotiations, that will be weak for us in terms of the movement.
You talk about that lobby, and we saw this week in the US, the Rockefeller family, they came out and made a gesture. I don't know if it was such a great gesture that they're going to disinvest or divest from fossil fuels and the like going forward. How important is those kinds of gestures from the most powerful family probably on the planet in fighting the climate change fight?
It's significant, and it's one of many. So it hasn't been the first divestment that has happened in terms of the actions. A lot of the universities in the US, in Europe, have been divesting, as well as in Australia. We're going to be starting as 350 Africa, a campaign here in South Africa to look specifically at divestment. It definitely is an area that needs to be dealt with. In terms of a target, it is a thorn in their side, and it will weaken the fossil fuel industries.
What about South Africa and in the wider continent? What are the key challenges that we have to overcome in the medium and short term in dealing with climate change and the issues that we face with?
I think one of the key challenges is actually bringing home what climate change is to us. It's the fact that many people still think climate change is going to happen, or it's not quite here yet. But but it is, and it's creating that linkage. So creating a lot more awareness around climate change and saying, actually, when you have 12 years of drought in northwest Kenya and people are migrating, you have a whole range of spin-off issues that we need to deal with as a continent. And when you have high-price food, cost of food and water will go up. Shortages of water. Our decisions on how we use our water must become more kind of focused. We can't just say we're going to have fracking and use millions of liters of water for that. So I think that was where our voices, and on this continent, we're going to have to make policy changes much more hard-hitting.
There is no doubt that climate change is real right now. We see water shortages even here in Gauteng right now. We see different kinds of rain patterns around the country. It's affecting the ecosystems and the like. It's real. What is your message to the individual, to the families out there watching this? What should they be thinking and doing and contributing to save tomorrow for our children?
There's two very strong areas that I think people need to be aware of. The first is we need to be aware of climate change. So if there's a hailstorm tomorrow, it's not necessarily climate change. It's the longer-term effects. And we need to to understand what is happening around us in terms of the environment. That's something that we need to do. We need to put pressure on our governments to make the right choices. So when we have our government saying we will build more coal and we will build more coal and we will build more coal, we need to step back and say, but actually that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, that's what the IPCC has said, is that it's fossil fuel industries, and a lot of it is coal burning. How can we then say we want to, make things better? So we need to put pressure on governments to say, stop that coal, invest more in renewable energy.
Build the nuclear plants, is that...
No.
Thank you. Thanks, Spiro. We've run out of time. That's a discussion for another day.
Absolutely.
That we will have. I just had to test you there a little bit before I let you go.
And of course, people to find out more about us on, Facebook
Be conscious, be a good citizen, be involved, don't sit back on your soapbox, complain, and you're making no contribution yourself.
Absolutely, and get involved in wherever you are. You know, 350.org, we do kind of have community activities, so get involved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Farrell Adam, team leader of the Climate Justice Group, 350.org. It's affecting all of us. It's affecting your future and your children's future, so let's get involved. Let's take a look now at the world's front pages this morning, because the show has to go on. We start with the Belgium paper, Le Soir, reflecting on all of the debate during the UN General Assembly yesterday in New York. The UN Security Council has unanimously adopted a resolution urging member states to intensify efforts against terrorist networks. Still on the war against terrorism, there you have one of the Turkish front pages this morning with a photo of Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan addressing the 69th high-level debate of the UN General Assembly. With more than 1.5 million refugees seeking refuge in Turkey, President Erdogan called for international support to aid victims of terrorism. Then, and there you have the International New York Times with a photo of an Ebola victim in Liberia. According to the Times, only 18% of Ebola patients in Liberia are being cared for in hospitals or other settings that reduce the risk of transmission by isolating them from the rest of the population. Very concerning indeed that only 18% of Ebola victims in that country are being cared for. Now, before we take a break and to end off this environmentally conscious first slot of our show, we found this old video clip this morning of a very rare encounter between a buffalo and a lion, giving the saying, having your friends back, a whole new meaning in an amazing viral video recorded in South Africa's Kruger National Park last year. A hungry lion got far more than it bargained for after its attack on an African buffalo. Let's take a look at this dramatic turn of events. Talking about biting off a little bit more than you can chew, huh? Nature is beautiful, and we should try and keep it intact for generations to come. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
SABC News delivers stories that unify the nation
in many ways. Stories that inspire us
to see the world differently, appreciate
and celebrate our diversity. And mostly, they make this place a better country to live in despite our color, beliefs or culture.
I
am
Mahendra Raghunath.
Tabile Ngwado, Lulu Kabu.
Join us every day
as we provide updates on
local and international news
straight into your home.
We are SABC News.
Because of cancer, I realized life is short. I want to live my dream.
They can bend my face, but not my voice.
I'm definitely not a cross-dresser. South Africa, I'm just a gay man.
Join Puleng Molebatsi on Bupilong every Saturday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsroom here on SABC News. It's time now for us to do our weekly look at what's happening on our online pages and the social media front. And joining me this morning is Digital News Production Editor here at SABC Digital is Christelle Dutoy. Good morning, Christelle. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Evan.
It's the day after the Heritage Day, lots of festivities around the country. We saw the big events in Klerksdorp and the like. Just give us a little idea as to how we covered it and what people can be on the lookout for on the platform.
Sure. So we have a special report on the website where we, in the build-up to Heritage Day and throughout Heritage Month, have been looking at what are the issues that people are speaking about. So you can go to the landing page of sabc.co.za/news and see that. And part of what we did there, for example, is to look at World Heritage Sites in South Africa, because we have a lot to brag about, and profile that a bit and just play our role in educating people.
Yeah.
And then what we do on the day is that, apart from the TV and the radio coverage that SABC does, we send a team. I'm still sunburnt from that coverage in Orkney, and we try and bring people's views. We try and bring tweets that are going out at that time. We try and do some multimedia. So yesterday we did quite a lot about what Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa was saying, and just the vibe there, and what people were talking about. But then of course you need to place things in context. So we brought some analysis. To Venter from the University of Northwest Potchefstroom campus was saying, you know, it's great talking about Heritage Day and all these fluffy things, but if you're poor and you don't have water and sanitation, then it really lacks context. So we focused a bit on that through multimedia. And we also had opinion pieces saying Indigenous people in South Africa are 6 times more likely to be poor than just the general man and woman in the street. So we try and bring it in context and shape the knowledge base that way.
We saw a nice turnout at that event. You told me now you were there yesterday. Just give us a little insight, sort of inside track as to what were the highlights that came out of that event.
I think the colour around the event was lovely. They had a cultural parade that took place with all the different ethnicities and tribes in South Africa being represented. And it was lovely. You know, as a journalist, you become so jaded towards these events. And I was running around thinking, wow, this is fun. So it really was fantastic. And then what we do then is to add value to that and not just look at the day. So we, for example, looked at struggle heritage sites. But the deputy, or acting president rather, was greeting people. And we saw him going up to an old lady, and his security contingent didn't expect him to be speaking to ordinary people. And there was a bit of chaos, and he wanted to interact with people and say, you know, this is what our heritage is about.
Oh, that's amazing. And the entourage, they were really well received there yesterday. But to conclude this Heritage Day discussion, I think we have to put on the table the polarizing factor around Heritage Day at the moment is the fact that in some quarters they want it to be Braai Day. And it's Braai Day versus Heritage Day. What is the sense that you guys got with the interactions around Braai Day and the kind of opinion pieces that you've put out? What are people?
I think one has to acknowledge the fact that it started as Braai Day and government only later made it Heritage Day. And Braai Day doesn't necessarily have to be a colonial frying of meat. You know, it's part of how people relax, how people express themselves. It certainly had people talking. I think our challenge as journalists is to channel it and to show different perspectives. So we had Jan Braai's insert on the website showing how he remembers Heritage Day, but we also had cultural struggle heritage sites that we reflected. Robben Island, the houses in Soweto, those kinds of places, which we did through a lovely interactive map. So it's not just a case of someone tells you about your history. You can go in, you can interact with it, you can see on a map exactly where it's located. We'll always keep braaiing, but maybe we can add a bit of context to it and a bit of depth to our knowledge base. Yeah,
I liked what I read on Facebook from a friend of mine. He said, you know, when we braai on Heritage Day, we should really talk about our real heritage, our family heritage, our history, so that we can understand the context, that it should be a balanced scenario around the two and not one or the other.
Because even to speak of a heritage is a bit simplistic. You know, we have multiple heritages and things that influence who we are today. So, I think people experience it as part of how they express themselves on Heritage Day. And who doesn't like a braai?
We all love a braai. I must say, I had a braai and a jacuzzi there at my house yesterday, and it was
Sounds like I should have been there rather than in the sun.
You know, you look a little bit sunburnt. We had a really nice time there. And for me, that's what Heritage Day is about friends and family and getting that right. But talk about friends and family. On a rather sad note, friends and family of the deceased in this collapsed church in Nigeria, welcome back some survivors earlier this week. It was a very emotional return. What has been the conversation in the digital sphere around the issue of the returning survivors and then those unaccounted for at the moment?
I think the story has played out very strongly in social media, and it's kind of played out in phases where we first got disjointed reports of what's happening, and then we started seeing people returning through what they call the biggest evacuation in post-democratic South Africa, where government had to go fetch people. A lot of sentiment expressed as to shock and support for people, and I think what people are starting to realize is this is going to be a long process. It's not a case of suddenly we know this is the remains of our loved one. It's a DNA process. It takes time. There's, of course, controversy around the church involved as well.
Yes.
We saw some of that in Newsroom playing out. But, of course, there's allegations of TB Joshua and bribery.
Yes.
So we've reflected some of that as well. And people are, you find extreme views. I think you found that in Newsroom as well. You find very extreme views.
Yeah.
And, social media really highlights all of those different kinds of views. So on the website, there's articles about it. There's also tweets about it. There's also audio about it where you can listen to where he interacts with journalists.
Now, it's a very polarizing figure at the moment, TB Joshua. What's the sentiment towards him in the digital space right now, especially here in South Africa? I would think it must be quite negative.
I think it is skeptical. I think there's always, different... The nice thing about social media is that all voices can express themselves. But if we look at the body of opinion from South Africa, I think mostly it's very skeptical and a lot of concern about his silence in the wake of the event. Yeah. And now suddenly he's coming to South Africa. There's lots of controversy around the visa and things like that. I think the overwhelming sentiment is one of skepticism.
Skepticism, I thought it was absolute disgust in some quarters from the stuff that I've read and some of the tweets that we've seen. I think the fact that they closed the compound for so long before they allowed rescue teams in, I think that really didn't sit very well with people. But let's move on quickly. We had an entire segment around World Rhino Day a little early in the week, and we led off today with the plight of the rhino, especially in the Kruger Park. We spoke about the war on rhinos and where we are, but where are we in the digital space on this issue?
So what you often find is there's a lot of numbers floating around and people are talking about concepts, and what we're trying to do is to concretize it very much. And we do what people call infographics. So it's a graphic depiction of what is actually happening. And you're right, it is a war. If we look at the fact that in 2014 they've poached nearly 800 rhino already. Yeah. In 2007 it was 13 in the entire year. So something like this will show it in visual contrast with each other. It'll talk about the fact that South Africa is home to 80% of the rhino population of the world, but that's about 20,000 rhinos. So if we look at 1,000 a year, it's not very long that we're still going to have rhinos.
Yeah, no,
so that's one of the powerful ways in which you can utilize the web and make it visual and give it a face, so to speak.
Yeah, you can see the end of rhinos really within our lifetime. We see a lot of campaigns. We see that you'll be also running the campaign. World Wildlife Fund is running in especially Vietnam, where the elites there believe in the mythical power of rhino horn. Is there support for this kinds of campaigns, and do we see this kind of thing bearing fruit?
I think definitely, when we put something like this out on the web, you see reaction to it. And I think, like you said, it's when citizens get involved. I was recently in Kruger, and for example, where at the camps you indicate what game you saw, people don't indicate anymore where they saw rhinos, because there's a collective sense, apart from the rules of the reserve, there's a collective sense of we need to preserve what we have. And I think the key is when people get involved, be it on social media, be it on news platforms, or be it in person, preferably, that's when you start seeing change.
Chriselle, fantastic. Thank you for joining us today and giving us the whole lowdown as to how you can interact with our digital platforms and what kind of content is there. And there's really lots of original content and new stuff. Thank you for joining us as always. Chriselle du Toit, who is our digital production editor here at SABC News. Of course, sabc.co.za/news. That's where you can find all of that content. Let's take a look now at what you've been talking about on social media in the last little bit. Oh, it's water, isn't it? No, Mr. CEO of Rand Water, the problem is poor planning and no maintenance on those reservoirs, says Connie. Very harsh. Lesotho supply Gauteng's P with water. Now the instability in Lesotho and water shortage in Gauteng. What's up with that? I think that's a bit of a stretch, but anyhow. How many businesses are affected by the water shortage? Schools, hospitals, restaurants, hotels, salons all need water to do business, says Ntsako. Kumo says, rather take my electricity, but not my water. Water is life. We can't live like this. Yes, it is very, very difficult indeed. There you have the city of Tshwane saying, Rand Water, as a caring city, we have dispatched 17 tankers to the affected area as a contingency measure. Yes, I spoke to the mayor yesterday, and Mr. Ramakgopa pointed out that they will continue to support communities with water trucks as long as it's necessary. But they expect matters to get a little bit better in the days to come. Let's take a look now at what's on our Facebook page. A 5-step process is underway to identify the bodies of South Africans killed in the Nigeria building collapse. Also, the United Nations Security Council has unanimously adopted a resolution urging member states to intensify efforts against terrorist networks. And then the KwaZulu-Natal Premier, Senzo Mkhunu, has lashed out at the people who mobilize communities to embark on violent protests when they are not satisfied about service delivery. Very interesting story that is. You can find that story and a whole lot more on that very page that you see there. That's Newsroom Facebook page, and we like to give you a little bit of a different slant on that page. Now, when the crime stats were announced last week, stock theft numbers were well down on the previous year. And if one takes a look at the techniques used by some of these criminals here in South Africa, it is clear to see why. This video should put a smile on your face. Where's the music? Question of why steal the cow when you can get the milk for free? Stock theft numbers are down here in South Africa, and if you're going to put a cow in your little sedan, well, you're not going to make a dent in the numbers of stock here in South Africa. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back after a little break.
Africa is growing at a rapid rate.
A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation.
Like a group of students hard at work in Uganda developing tools that will save lives. Or an African-developed payment method making the public transport industry cashless in Kenya.
You book me through M-Pesa.
There are apps only for people who live here. And the continent is accepting the growth of modern technology usage in people's everyday lives.
The ICT revolution now belongs to Africa.
This is information that matters to us.
To find out a bit more about social media and technology news, join Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Can South Africans survive 2014?
Many of us actually were given bursaries by state-owned enterprises, but the state shrunk, telecom was privatized, and now we are sitting with huge unemployed people, but huge backlogs in terms of infrastructure that could develop the same young people.
It's in our hands, and our future is up to us. It's a tough year, and tough decisions will have to be made by the government, It's an election year, which makes it difficult to make tough decisions. I mean, it's tough to make tough decisions. It's especially tough in an election year.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Hello and welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just take a look at the top stories this morning. The water shortages in Gauteng are being discussed as a matter of urgency in government today. This follows days of water shortages in the Johannesburg, Tshwane and Ekurhuleni metros as well as Mogale City. Several factors have been blamed, including copper cable theft. Water tanks have also been sent to areas to help residents that have been affected by the water crisis. Government has appealed to families of those who died in the Nigeria building collapse about 2 weeks ago to exercise patience. 62 South Africans among the 115 people who died when a guest house belonging to the Synagogue Church of All Nations have been positively identified. At the time of the building collapse, 349 South Africans were reported to have been visiting the church of televangelist TB Joshua. And South African President Jacob Zuma has pledged to continue in every possible way to assist the people and governments of the hardest hit Ebola nations, namely Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone. President Zuma yesterday addressed global leaders at the United Nations.
And ready to continue to provide whatever resources at our disposal to assist the people and governments of our sister countries of Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone.
Remember, all those top stories and more are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Now moving on. Singer-songwriter Ndu Dlakadla, full name Nawimfundo, born great Ngome Zulu, launched her debut gospel jazz CD end of last month. She sings gospel music with jazz influence. In March 2013, she released her first single titled Goodness and Mercy, which saw her make an entry into the professional music scene. The song made a remarkable impact on its release, earning nominations for Best Songwriter and Best Gospel Jazz from the Crown Gospel Music Awards in 2013. Ndo joins us in studio today to tell us a bit more about her music career. We were privileged enough to have a live performance this morning. Let's just have a look at that.
There's a rhythm in my head, song in my spirit, voices of angels, the singing Hosanna. There's a song in my heart, I can't explain this feeling, the Spirit of the Lord must be upon me. There's a rhythm in my head, song in my spirit, voices of angels, the singing Hosanna. There's a song in my heart, I can't explain this feeling, the Spirit of the Lord must be upon me. Hosanna to the highest, Hosanna to the King. Hosanna, Hosanna to the highest, Hosanna to the King. And the sounds of joy, bells are ringing, sweet sounds of heaven, the ringing in my head. Hosanna, King of Kings.
Well, there you have it. Ndo joins us today on Newsroom. Welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you.
Let's start off your CD. The CD was launched last month. How is it different from your 2013 release, and what can your fans be expecting?
Okay, the CD that we released last year, it was a single, so it was just a testing water kind of thing. So when we did that and we realized that it did make an impact to the music industry, so we decided to make the full album, which is now the one
Which has now been released.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about the music that we can be expecting, the message behind it and the theme.
The music that you can expect from that album is the more inspiring music. You know, I sing about joy and, you know, inspiring. When I write songs that inspire people, songs that gives people hope, songs that make you feel good about yourself, you know, especially in Christ. So me loving jazz, understanding jazz, so I feel like I'm just projecting myself in that album.
As a female jazz musician, do you find it quite difficult in the industry? And it's quite rare. Like, how did you get into the whole jazz music scene?
Well, I like jazz. I wanted to give people what I know, and I wanted to show people who I am, and I wanted people to receive Ndodlakaza as a brand, as a person, and as someone whom they can relate to, you know, someone who can give them hope and joy. So if listening to jazz for me is soothing, and, you know, it relaxes me. So
when did this music journey start? How long ago?
I always knew I could sing. I can't say how old I was because I cannot be able to tell you that. But I always knew I could sing, but I never thought I could take it to a professional level. And when I got saved, you know, about 12 years ago, when I received Christ as my Lord and Savior, that's when I realized that, hey, I can do more, you know. A lot of things, you know, were awakened in me. So I joined the worship ministry at church, and I was able to learn how to be a musician and how to also still be yourself while being a professional musician.
Would you call this like your turning points in your career and what inspired you to go further? Now, you're also a mother.
Yes, I am.
How are you balancing all of the acts in your life?
You know, I have a very supportive husband because you cannot be able to do all of that if you don't have anyone or if you don't have a support system. But I have a very supportive husband. He's my partner, my business partner. You know, he's always there. He's my #1 fan, I can say that. You know, he always puts me first in everything that I do. So I know that if I'm planning on doing something, he will just run with it. So I'm able to do all these things because I have him on my side, and we're working together in most of the things that we do at home, in business, and, you know, in everything that we do.
You also do a lot of work with young people.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
You know, I have passion for teenagers. You know, my teenage life, I became an adult while still a teenager. So I felt like there were years that I missed while I was still a teenager. So that's why I have that passion for young people. So in my hometown, I used to teach them about love and how to behave, especially girls, and how, you know, and all those things. So at least I've achieved something because they're now in tertiaries and they're studying, you know, they got hope, you know. I was there.
A word of advice to these young people who want to follow in your footsteps.
Just know who you are. Believe in yourself. Find that inner thing. Find that inner person inside you that can tell you good things. Close your ears on any negative influences or any negative messages that you can get, because those are the things that kills you, and those are the things that kill your passion. So for you to be able to do and to achieve your goals and your dreams, you need to believe in yourself and believe in your creator.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Who's back with her. CD was launched last month. We'll upload more information to our Newsroom Facebook page if you want to go find it there. Yevin, over to you.
Thank you, Katrine. If that was a soundtrack playing at my church growing up, I would have attended a whole lot more, I can tell you that. It's simply marvellous. Thank you, Ndo, for lightening up the day today, by bringing us some real beautiful jazz influence in a gospel sound of way. Let's take a quick final look on what you're talking about before we go. TB Joshua at Scone. TB Joshua, is that right? Once in a month. I will be traveling to South Africa to meet people from South Africa. We're waiting for you, TB Joshua. You better come onto Newsroom and explain to us why you were missing for 5 days. Instead of coming to South Africa monthly in memory of the dead martyrs, TB Joshua must give their families monthly grants. Most were breadwinners, said Ntama. That is exactly right. Barry Roo, His Majesty says, Christianity becomes very difficult when you try to serve God in man's way instead of serving God in God's way. Well, you served Oscar Pistorius in the right way. Tell you that. Kuni Kukuk says, South Africa must insist that Prophet TB Joshua be arrested for culpable homicide soonest, says Kuni. And Chika talks about when TB Joshua offers investigative journalists 50,000 naira, what is he hoping to buy? When they accept, what are they selling him? They're selling him a media silence. That's what we heard. Even in the great Vanguard newspaper, very little was reported on this thing for that whole time. We try to flip it up every day, and very little reportage on this tragedy in Nigeria. We're waiting for TB Joshua to come to South Africa. If he does, we'll extend him an invitation to come onto Newsroom and tell us why he was missing for so long on the days after the building collapse there. That's where we wrap it today. This is Newsroom, and it's broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
There's a song in my heart. I can't explain this feeling. The Spirit of the Lord must be upon me. There's a rhythm in my head, a song in my spirit, voices of angels that singing Hosanna. There's a song in my heart. I can't explain this feeling. The Spirit of the Lord must be.
An American-based foundation has donated 15 million rand for the construction of a clinic at Umlazi.
This facility that is going to be built here with a 15 million rand contribution from AHF is, among other things, going to actually help us to expand.
Itembaletu Clinic is the only clinic that caters solely for HIV patients. It accommodates 16,000 people.
Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight.
Despite enduring decades of persecution, the church in China is still one of the fastest growing body of believers in the world. In the late 70s, after the death of Chairman Mao Zedong, the authorities lifted the ban on organized religion and allowed churches to operate within certain legal boundaries. Based on official statistics, there are now between 20 and 25 million Christians in China.
China is going through amazing social changes. I mean, they are moving from, the previous communist system to what they now call a socialist system. Yeah, and there's great social changes. People are looking for something, stable, something certain, something powerful, something sovereign, yeah? And they're turning to religion. And therefore, we have young people coming to our churches, young people asking about the Christian faith. Yeah? And I believe that's one of the reasons why many are flocking to the church. Yeah?
Despite the growth, Chinese Christians only represent 2% of the world's most populated country. But this figure is only based on membership of state-recognized churches.
In spite of the rapid growth of the church in China, it is still a minority in society. Unofficial estimates put the number of Christians at 90 to 100 million. Even with that, we're looking at 7 to 8%. And many of the Christians are from the working class and from the farmers. Yeah.
While years of persecution failed to eliminate Christianity in China, it did leave a shortage of Bibles, which were mostly confiscated and burnt during the Cultural Revolution. After the unbanning of Christianity, Bibles were printed on state-run presses, but these couldn't keep up with the demand.
The church in China asked us whether we can help them set up a printing press, because at that time, the printing press were all owned by the state. Although they are very happy and willing to print Bibles for the church, it was not high in their priority. So, and sometimes it takes as long as 1 year from the time the church placed the order to the time they finally took delivery. In 1987, the press began the printing of Bibles. The first Bible came off in October 14, 1987. Last year, September 11, we celebrated the completion of 50 million copies of Bibles. I was there. I still remember the occasion when we were told of this good news, great news, because while the world remember the tragic event of September 11, 2001, we celebrated the goodness and greatness of God.
With the help of the United Bible Societies and its affiliates, the costs have been kept within reach of the average Chinese citizen.
For the last 22 years, we have not stopped helping them with the funding of the Bible papers, which has helped to keep the prices of Bibles affordable in China.
In a country where no formal evangelizing can take place outside of the church building, Christians have found a loophole by giving pieces of the gospel to friends and family.
The Christians are not allowed to go to the public to preach Christianity. Something which I feel is powerful in China, and that is the Bible. Christians will buy Bible or gospel portions and give it to the non-Christian friends and family members, encourage them to read. Yeah. And I've heard testimonies after testimonies of Chinese who became Christians after reading the Bible and the gospel.
On September 11th last year, the 50 millionth Bible rolled off the Amity press. To date, a total of 53 million Bibles, including 10 million for export to countries, including South Africa, have been printed. Ironically, the state-owned press in a country which once banned any religious practices is not only serving the re-emergence of Christianity in